وما والاه وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Assalamu alaikum. How's
Alhamdulillah.
doing?
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah. So it's the last Friday, last weekend before the Ramadan commences. I thought I'd just begin by sharing that, with your position as a student of Deen, it is important that you understand your responsibility kind of changes in Ramadan as far as what you need to spend most of your time with. Everyone else would be reciting a lot more Quran, and that's fine. You should spend a significant amount of your ibadah time with your studies, with this study of the Quran. It's very important that you understand that this would be more important for you than your recitation, because what you are currently busy with is a fard kifaya, meaning that it's necessary for some people to be studying this much of the Quran, and only some people remove that responsibility from everyone else. And because that responsibility has been taken up by yourselves, or Allah has chosen you for it, therefore your primary focus should be this, because while everyone can recite Quran, not everyone can be studying this. So I'm not saying neglect your recitation, but that is for you, at least at this moment in time in your life, going to be secondary. So if you have only, for example, 2 hours to spare in Ramadan for your Quran activity or for your ibadah activity, then you cannot justify spending more than half of that time with, rather, let me rephrase this. You cannot spend more than half of that time doing other things. You need to be spending at least half of that time with your studies, with Arabic, with your tafsir, with the memorization of it, with the repetition of it, your scales, etc., because it has a higher purpose, right? I would go as far as saying, if you normally, for example, recite the Quran in its entirety in Ramadan, and it would mean that if you do what I'm saying you need to do this Ramadan, that you would not recite your entire Quran, I would say that's absolutely fine. Rather do it that way. Again, because, what can we possibly say about reciting the entire Quran in Ramadan? For the most part, we could say it's sunnah, but I don't know of a specific evidence to declare that there's a specific sunnah of reciting the entire Quran in Ramadan, from cover to cover, except with the Prophet ﷺ meeting with Sayyidina Jibreel ﷺ, in which they would recite whatever was revealed of the Quran up until that point. But the hadith doesn't say recitation. The hadith says فَيُدَارِسُهُ الْقُرْآنِ. So he would teach him the Quran. They would study the Quran. That's actually what it says. So even that hadith would count against the concept of just, pure recitation. So there's nothing wrong with recitation, but unfortunately, in the entire Muslim world, non-Arab Muslim world, we have turned things upside down, where we've made the pure recitation the top priority as far as our relationship with the Quran is concerned, and the actual understanding and study of, we've made that secondary. And if you think about what this really comes down to, it's like sending your child to school, and you are happy with the fact that they taught your child to read, even though your child doesn't understand a single word of what he or she is reading. So you are happy with the fact that they can read and read and read and read, they can read any book and so on, but they don't understand anything, and that's just ridiculous. So that's kind of what we've done. So inshallah ta'ala, that's your nasiha from me as we commence bi'idhnillah. Let us jump straight into the surah now. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعاديات ضبحا فالموريات قدحا فالمغيرات سبحا فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن به جمعا إن الإنسان لربه لكنود وإنه على ذلك لشهيد وإنه لحب الخير لشديد أفلا يعلم إذا بعثر ما في القبور وحصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. So what we've done to this point was to give an overview of the surah, just in terms of its meaning. I felt that the surah has a very powerful meaning. It's a holistic meaning, and that you need to do it as a bird's eye view before you jump into a deeper analysis of the surah. So that's what we did, because by doing so, you can see the onomatopoeia taking place there, maybe some alliteration, just the rhyming scheme of the surah, how the sounds actually translate into meaning without you necessarily knowing the meaning, but the sound effects, so to speak. So sounding words, it's very striking in the message that it's trying to give you, because it's very picturesque, very vivid imagery that's given in the surah. And the point that it makes is an extremely powerful one, and it sort of prompts you to do introspection. All right, the point that it makes is inevitably that, as a human being, Allah wants you to take note of how ungrateful you are. But the way that Allah does this is by first making you observe horses and other domesticated creatures, and then specifically horses that you've trained to be warring horses, right? Jihad horses. Look at how obedient they are to you. Think about why they are so obedient to you. Think about the risks that they would actually take for you. Think about the commands that you give them and their willingness to obey those commands, right? And why. And now think about you. The horses, they just get fodder, they get shelter, whatever they get from you, and they just listen. Even if you put their lives at risk, they listen. Allah doesn't ask that of you. Allah doesn't ask you or expect you to risk your life, to give anything that's out of the ordinary. He gives you basic commands, but on the contrary, He provides you with everything that you have. He provides you with everything that you are, everything that you own. But what are you willing to do for Allah, as opposed to what you are not willing to do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And this is ingratitude. And then Allah Ta'ala carries on and He says, and on top of that, you are also very much aware of the fact that you are ungrateful. وَإِنَّهُ لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ. And then He draws your attention to the fact that, look, on the one hand, you may think that you can just get away with being like this, but are you not also aware that you will come back to Allah? أَفَلَا يَعْلَمُ إِذَا بُعْثِرَ مَا فِي الْقُبُورِ وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ إِنَّ رَبَّهُمْ بِهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَخَبِيرٌ. Are you not aware that you will come back to Allah, that there's a life after this, that this is not it? And this is also a very indirect way, yet striking way, of bringing up the topic of life after death, which is one of the topics that the disbelievers in Makkah al-Mukarramah struggled with so much. Like, of all the things that they struggled with, in order of priority, number one would be that there's only one God and that there are no other gods at all whatsoever. And then number two, it would be, that there's life after death. These are the things that they struggled with the most. So here you bring that subject up after so it's like the cherry on top at the end, right? Of it, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So I was looking at a number of documents that I thought may be of benefit. Oh, I see I'm having some internet issues here. Let me just see if I can sort this out before I continue, so that the internet will be, or rather the signal will be more stable. This is me sending a message to my household saying, please don't use the internet. All right. I was looking at a couple of documents thinking, okay, what are some of the resources that you could potentially utilize in order to add value to your study experience. So I was looking at the following. I'll share it with you, inshallah ta'ala. So this is the first one. Now, normally with students who are starting out, they tend to pick up Tafsir Ibn Kathir because it's an English tafsir, it's readily available and so on. And that's fine, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I just found in my experience that this one was also very, very beneficial. It's Ma'ariful Quran. It's not considered one of the, the classical, world-renowned works of tafasir. It's much more contemporary, but being more contemporary, the author actually relies on a plethora of tafasir works and brings that all together. And I think it was written in Urdu originally, and then translated into English. But the reason I'm saying that this was very useful to me, especially as a student and even now as a teacher for quick reference, is the simplicity of the layout. It's not going to be too much information about a particular topic or about a particular section of Quran, but enough to give you a good understanding of that section. I would never rely on this alone, just like I would never rely on any one book of tafsir alone, but it's a very good starting point. Okay, so I would highly recommend that you acquire this Ma'ariful Quran. I have seen it in the bookshops. I do have a hard copy of it. It's not always the best of print, right? I haven't seen a very good print of this book, but the soft copy is also there. I don't know if it's freely available for download, but you're more than welcome to check online, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. So, Surah Adiyat, the running horses, the surah is Makki and it has 11 verses. Now, this is just a summary, but if you look at the topics after giving you the entire surah in translation, and it's usually quite a good translation, you see there at the bottom, it speaks about place of revelation. So this is quite important because it's an interesting difference. Now, sometimes there's a difference of opinion as to whether the surah is revealed before the hijrah or after the hijrah, right? In fact, it's quite common to see there are differences like that. However, those differences tend to be, the majority saying that it's one, and then one or two saying no, it's the other. All right. So those are easy to navigate because you basically just go with the majority. But in this instance, and it happens also now and then, you see there's like a 50-50 split where many Sahaba are of the opinion that it's Makki, and others are, and the other 50% says Madani. So according to Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud, Jabir, Hassan Basri, Ikrimah, and Ata rahimahumullah ta'ala, Surah Al-Adiyat was revealed in Mecca, and according to Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, Anas, Imam Malik, and Qatada, the surah was revealed in Medina. So that's quite an interesting split. You have significant Sahaba who are very clued up with Quran and Revelation, splitting 50-50. Now, this is easily resolved if you understand Ulumul Quran. You would know that it's not uncommon for a surah to be recited by the Prophet ﷺ several times without necessarily specifying that, okay, this was just revealed now for the first time. But rather he would recite a surah. The context would seem like it's being revealed for the first time, but those around perhaps weren't there the first time that it was actually revealed. So it may have been revealed in Makkah, and then later on he recites it again for a particular situation or context, and then there are people present who did not hear this before, and then they would consider this as the first time it's being revealed. So that's quite a common occurrence. So Allah knows best. Now, this surah actually has clues of being both Makki and Madani. The Makki clues are kind of more obvious. The rhyming scheme, the shortness of the verses, the shortness of the surah itself, these are all indicative of Makki surah. Then looking at the content, we find it's speaking about the signs of Allah Ta'ala's creation, tadhkir bi ala'ila, signs of Allah's favors. In other words, it speaks about tadhkir bil ma'ad, eschatology, or the study of death and what comes after death. It speaks about the oneness, or rather the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It speaks about the nature of humankind. These are themes that we associate with Makki Surah. However, the one thing that we don't generally associate with Makki Surah is warfare, right? Warfare, jihad. And there's a clear theme that's taking place here around warfare, which is the warding horses, how they strike at Fajr time or in the morning time, and just the description of these horses, alludes to the fact that it's speaking about something that's Madani. However, there's nothing that makes it specifically our wars and our horses and that we battle like that. It's just speaking about the concept. So all in all, I agree with the view that it's Makki, and it seems to me that most books of tafsir has it listed as a Makki surah. And I haven't seen it listed as a Madani surah officially, although the Mufassirun would explain that yes, it is in fact Makki, but there's differences of opinion. I hope that's clear, inshallah ta'ala. And then we can move on to we have the explanation already. We can now move on to what he calls the lexicographical analysis. So that's the important part. But up until this point here, are there any questions? Anyone wants to say anything, ask anything? Bismillah. From regarding anything that was said up until this point. So I don't want to move on until I know that we're kind of all on the same page. Bismillah.
So, just a question about the Makki and Madani discussion. Is it important that we know exactly where it comes into, in terms of like maybe the Sirah, or is that important to have that discussion, or is it fine if we just kind of assume, okay, we don't really know and move on?
What do you mean by we? Like you as a student, or we as the Muslim Ummah, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, like us as in the context of learning it now.
Oh, I see. It's not critically important. But in my opinion, knowing this information assists greatly in terms of how you understand certain concepts in the how can I put this, in the surah itself, certain themes. Okay, it's got more to do with more or less when the surah was revealed, so that you can understand it in light of the surah, as you rightfully said. So I would say it's not critical as in you cannot possibly understand it without that, but I think your understanding of the surah would be so much more enriched by knowing that. To give you an example, so in our first year full-time studies, right, we had to go through the Arabic, as you are doing now, and then go through the entire Quran from cover to cover in meaning, and then we studied the first 10 ajza, which we needed to know word for word verbatim with all of the Arab, and that was what the exam was on. So obviously my knowledge of Quran increased from, I would say, basically something like 0 to 10% at the beginning to a lot more at the end, thinking that, okay, now I know Quran now, okay? And then when I picked up a book of Sirah for the first time, then I understood that what I knew of the Quran in terms of the meanings has now increased at least by 50%, right? So that was the how drastic an increase it was, because the Sirah provides you a context for the revelation, and you can't understand a text correctly or thoroughly until you understand its context, and the Sirah is its context. And the more context you understand, the brighter your understanding will be of the text. So that's part of it. And the understanding of the Makki Madani differences is to be able to place it within a context, and that's about it. But it's not to say that you can't proceed further until you learn that. I hope that sort of answers it. Provides context to be able to understand meanings of words. Yeah, exactly, right? Anything else? All right, so let's go on with the analysis. So the word Adiyat is derived from the word adu. Ain, dal, wow. And I think this is very interesting because if I were to ask you right now, what does the word adawa mean? Can anybody recall what the word adawa or aduun in fact?
Worship. Worship.
Not abd or ibadah. Listen carefully.
Invite.
Adawa. Adawa.
Invite?
Invite. No, that's da'wa.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Don't be ashamed of giving an incorrect answer in a classroom. The classroom is the space for you to say any nonsense that comes to your head because it's a safe space. It's when you're outside of the classroom that we worry. Because there you shouldn't be speaking nonsense. There you should know, inshallah.
Running.
Running.
Got it.
Okay, so that's what the meaning is in relation to this surah. But most of the time, if you were to open up your dictionary right now, I don't know if you have it close at hand, but if you were to open up your dictionary right now, you will see that the meaning that you're generally going to get is
Animosity.
animosity. There we go. You're going to get animosity, treachery, crossing the bounds, etc. So this is quite interesting because... Oh, okay. Somebody forgot to mute themselves there. So it's quite interesting in the sense that if you look at the meanings of the word as it appears in the Quran, it comes in the form of enemy, enmity, animosity, treachery, etc. All of those meanings actually come down to one thing, and that is going over the bounds, transgressing the limits. This is very important. This is where etymology enhances your understanding. Etymology meaning the origin of the word. So you have the borders, right? You have the borders. When you cross those borders, that's considered adawa. Now, generally speaking, that is negative. That's looked at as negative because you went over the board. You went over the limit. So normally in the Quran, when this word comes, it comes in the ma'na of going over the limits, being okay. I keep muting everyone, and then it stays. Somebody is accidentally unmuting themselves. Okay, I changed it now. I hope that would sort it out. Bismillah. What was I saying? Oh yes, okay. So going over the boundaries. So in relation to this surah, it didn't make sense to me. Like when I read the word, I was like, why is this word being used? But the idea is these horses, they are constantly outstripping, constantly going over the board, over the border, right? Constantly sort of seeking to push the limits. By racing, right? By racing. So I found that to be interesting because it gave me a better appreciation for the word adawa in other contexts, right? In other contexts where we speak about adawata wal baghda, right? Or udwanan and so on. It's almost like, you're pushing the limits. It's not just being treacherous or doing transgression and enmity and so on. It's like you're forcing the limits. You're forcing to go over the boundaries. So it was just a side note. But this is the power of Arabic in that you just have to take a word to its 3 root letters. And once you understand the 3 root letters, you look at the various meanings of those root letters. Then you relate it to the word that you are currently looking at to understand the relationship. And your understanding will just increase so much more. And by learning the ma'na, the meaning of one set of root letters. I mean, you've seen it now in your learning of the scales. You take one set, let's say adawa. Now you know, and if you understand the meaning, you know potentially hundreds of words based on that one word, right? Like for example, if you see that the word is in the 7th bab, okay, this is. I like to, by the way, I heard the 7th bab lesson. My way of remembering the meaning of the 7th bab is spontaneity. Something happens by itself, spontaneously. Like Like the example that Mullah Zakaria was using, my one word of like remembering what that means is spontaneity. Infajara, it burst forth. It burst forth like the water just came out. So these are what I'm teaching you right now. What I'm trying to explain is that the Arabic language has these quote unquote shortcuts built into it, and it makes the language actually very easy to learn. If you just give it that chance. So, adawa, to go over the limits. Then the dabh, right? Wal adiyati dabha. So, this wow in wal adiyat, the wow in wal adiyat, what is the analysis of the wow in wal adiyat? Quickly, anyone? This is another resource that I used. Very bad print, but very useful resource. It's a word-for-word translation with a little bit of explanation on the side, in English with some Arabic analysis. So you see the word is wal adiyat and not just adiyat. Oh, I changed that. Excuse me. The reason I did that was because somebody kept unmuting themselves accidentally, and it caused me to sort of to lose my concentration. Now, how do I change this now? Okay, there we go. Okay, Bismillah. You can unmute yourselves now. So I asked about the wow.
The
if
wow
anyone
is a qasam. It's a qasam.
Wawul qasam, that's correct. So once you see a wawul qasam, what are you now looking for? What is the structure that goes along with the wawul qasam?
The person that's swearing and
Okay.
by what they're swearing
Okay.
is a third, and I think.
Okay. So it's the instrument of the qasam. The instrument being the actual letter, and there's several. You get wawul qasam, ba'ul qasam, fa'ul qasam, ta'ul qasam, la uqsimu. That's a word. So that's the one thing. Then there's the thing that the oath is being taken by. In our case, as humans, we can only take an oath by God. We can only say wallahi. We are not allowed to take an oath by anything else. But Allah Azza wa Jal, being the creator of all, He can take an oath subhanahu wa ta'ala by anything. So Allah takes an oath by various phenomena. Wal adiyat, wal duha, wal shamsi, wal layl. So there's the thing that the oath is being taken by. Normally there's a correspondence between that thing and basically the main or most important part of the structure, which is the response, the statement that is actually being emphasized. Because you make an oath to say something important, to say an ultimate truth, to give veracity to something, and that's the most important part. So when Allah says wal asr, there's a purpose behind saying this. So the wow is important, the asr is important, but the most important thing is innal insana lafi khusr, the actual statement that's being made at the end. So those are the three parts you're basically looking for when you see a qasam. What is the structure here? You have wal adiyati dabaha, but it's attached to other things. So you have this fa. This fa would be harful atf, so it's connecting the statements. Fal muriyati qadaha, fal mughirati subaha, fa atharna bihi naqa'a, fa wasatna bihi jam'a. So these are all connected to the first waw al qasam, and then you have the statement which is often initiated with a instrument of emphasis like inna or la, right? So here in this case it's innal insana li rabbihi lakanud. Indeed, verily, humankind li rabbihi, to his or her Rabb, they are lakanud. They are very ungrateful, and there is a specific ma'ana for that. So now you can see the construction of the oath. And then there's certain other things that go along with the oath as well. What does the waw al qasam do to the word that follows it? Yes. In terms of i'rab, in terms of how, what does the waw al-qasam do to the word that follows it? Harfu jar. Yes. So waw al-qasam also acts as a harfu jar, which places the word that follows it into halatul jar, ismul majroor. So wal adiyati, although that ati of adiyat is not to be considered the sign of jar, wal adiyat is because of the jam mu'annath salim form of the word. Okay. And then this continues throughout the structure. So the fa'ul atf that's connecting it will cause that word that follows the fa to have the same i'rab. So any atf like wa'ul atf, fa'ul atf causes the words to be connected and therefore the hal to be connected as well. So whatever applies in the first one, wal adiyati dabaha, will apply in the second one, fal muriyati qadaha, and the simple explanation would be atf, it's ma'tuf, it's connected. And then fal mughirati subaha, you can see it's exactly the same. You have the ismul fa'il. I hope you understand what I'm saying by this. The ismul fa'il, the how do you translate that into English? The name of the doer. Okay, the active participle, I think. And then you have a word that follows it showing its condition. Wal adiyati, fal muriyati, fal mughirati, those are all ismul fa'ils. And then it changes slightly. فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَقَعَ فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعَ. Those again are connected and they are similar. So let's look at them individually. I hope this way of explaining it is not too confusing for you. But if you've had trouble there, then don't worry. We are still in the process. We are not done yet. Okay. The dabh. This is just looking at some specific meanings. The word dabaha means the sound coming out of the chest of a horse when it runs fast and breathes laboriously, panting. Okay. The word muriyat is the active participle of the infinitive of ira. So the word is ira. That would be your what's the word now? Sorry about this. I'm rusty with the names of the scales, the different parts of the scales. The masdar. The infinitive means to strike or produce fire with a particular piece of wood. The word qadah means to strike or produce fire with a flint, striking sparks of fire when the horse runs fast in a rocky ground with horse shoes on. The word mughirat is the active participle, again ismul fa'il, of the infinitive ighara. The infinitive means, again the masdar, means to attack or make a sudden hostile excursion upon an enemy. The word subh means the morning or dawn. I will share this PDF with you. I'll ask the admin to share it with you, inshallah ta'ala. So don't stress if you're trying to take a million notes right now, because it gives you nice specific meanings for each word. And subhanallah, really take some time out. Right? I know I said that last week as well, but read the surah in every salah again and try to think of all of these meanings as you read it. But it must come instantaneously without even trying to translate it. And the way you do that is by going over it so frequently that the meanings are so obvious to you. You don't even think of a translation process in your mind. So you see, it's very picturesque. It's like each word has got its own image. The word subh means morning or dawn. I'm sure you know that one. This time has been specifically mentioned because it was the practice of the Arabs to attack the enemy at dawn and not at night. In order to show off their bravery, they thought making a hostile excursion on the enemy in the darkness of the night was an act of cowardice. Remember, we spoke about that when we did the overall meaning. Then the word atharna is derived from ithara, which means to raise dust. The word naqa'a means dust itself. This implies that the dust became stirred up and spread upon the horizon, especially in the morning when the horses run fast. Normally this is not the time for clouds of dust to fly in this way unless it was caused by very fast running. And then he looks at the words, the verse فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا, then enter at the same time into the center of the opposing host. So these are the horses going right into the middle of the battle, into the army on the opposite side. So they penetrate into the center of the enemy forces without the least degree of fear. Then he looks at the word kanud. So this is a loaded word. This is an important one to understand. It doesn't, now we see the difference between translation and what we are doing. You open up a translation, it's going to tell you kanud, ungrateful. Khalas, that's it. But you know that there are so many different words that depict ingratitude. So what makes kanud special? Like, what is the actual meaning of this specific word? What are the nuances of this specific word? This is what's going to enhance your understanding much more than just reading a translation. So according to Sayyidina Hassan al-Basri, the famous tabi'i, he refers to the one who counts the calamities that befall him and forgets Allah's favors. So that's a very specific form of ingratitude. It's a person who only remembers all the nonsense that he goes through. It's like, oh, I lost my job. Oh, COVID. Oh, man, I keep getting sick. Oh, man, my money keeps running out. Oh, man, this. Oh, it's like all the calamities, and he's just thinking about all of those things, and they consume him, and they overwhelm him. But never thinks about, oh, subhanAllah, I'm alive. Oh, alhamdulillah, I've got good health. Alhamdulillah, I've got a roof over my head. Alhamdulillah, I actually have food in my grocery cupboard. I have grocery cupboards. I have a fridge. Sometimes I run out of space in my fridge or my freezer. And then I complain, oh, we must get a bigger fridge or freezer. Sometimes I complain about things like, oh, my cupboards are too full. I must just make some time to get rid of some stuff. What an ungrateful wretch I am. That's the idea here. So you only think of all the bad stuff that happens, highlighting that, complaining constantly, but forgets about all the favors of Allah. That's the meaning of kanud according to Sayyidina Hassan al-Basri. Abu Bakr Wasiti said that kanud is the one who spends the bounties of Allah for sinful purposes. Allah gives me lots of money, but I gamble with it. Allah gave me a nice car, I go to all the wrong places with it. Allah Ta'ala gave me good looks, so I attract the opposite sex with it, outside of a legal nikah type of thing. Excuse me. Whatever the case may be, that's just using material wealth as an example. Another form of an example may be intelligence. Allah gave me intelligence, but I use it to belittle others and make them feel silly or stupid, and so on and so forth. That's another meaning of the word kanud. Tirmidhi said that kanud is the one who looks at the bounty and not at the bounteous Lord. So they look at the favor, but they forget to look at Allah. Wow, this is an amazing phone. Look at what this phone can do. Just the phone. Did you take a moment to thank Allah for the phone? Did you think that you are the one who earned it and deserved it? And then it goes on. In short, all these interpretations lead to the sense of ungratefulness or ingratitude to favors and bounties, and hence the expression kanud means ungrateful. Now look at the difference between understanding those opinions as opposed to just seeing the word ungrateful. Right? So you decide what you make of that, inshallah, and whether that makes a significant difference. Quran Hive is a good reference. Sorry, who is this? This is Muhammad Amin. Can you just unmute yourself and explain to me what you're speaking about? Because I'm not sure. I think I know what Quran Hive is, but what do you mean by it's a good reference? Can you unmute yourself? Or is that still disabled? Oh, you can't. Inna lillahi. Sorry about this. Okay. Let's see if I can change it. Yes, I can. Bismillah. Try now.
We can unmute ourselves now.
There we go. Okay, so just tell me what you meant by that, please.
It's not Muhammad Amin speaking.
Okay. Muhammad Amin. I want to know what it's a good reference for, so that we can benefit, inshallah. Muhammad Amin. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Muhammad Amin, are you there?
Well, I can ask a quick question while we wait for Muhammad Amin.
Muhammad Amin has just unmuted himself, but yes, you may.
Muhammad Amin can go.
I don't understand this. He says, I'm united but maaf. Muhammad Amin, if I can just clarify, you made a suggestion. You said Quran Hive is a good reference. So I'm unfamiliar with it. Unmuted but maaf. Still don't understand. My question is,
I think it
Yeah.
means it as a resource in terms of meanings and a reference to the
Irshad.
Iraq of the words.
oh, okay. Does it give you just meanings, or does it give you analysis of the Arabic as well?
You can add the yes, you can add that to the app and you can break it down. Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Ikhrab.
And Arab as well.
Oh.
Okay, great. I'll have a look at that inshallah ta'ala. There was somebody else who wanted to ask something in the meanwhile.
I just wanted to ask about the use of the fa in verses 2 to 5. Are they all doing the same
Yes.
purpose? And what is that purpose?
Okay, so the fa has several sort of functions, okay? In this instance here, this is a fa'ul atf, meaning it's connecting the one to the other. But the way that it connects is different from, say, for example, a wow, okay? So fa, wow, and thumma, they are all connecting instruments. But there's slight differences in that the fa shows immediate succession, one thing following the other immediately. The wow shows succession, but no indication of time whatsoever. Right? No indication of time whatsoever. So the one thing could be following the other over a significantly short period or long period of time. It doesn't matter. And then the thumma, excuse me. The thumma shows succession, but over a longer period of time. So those are the various functions. In this instance of Surah Al-Adiyat, you can see how they quickly follow up one after the other because it's rapid fire imagery. وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبَحًا, by the horses, the warding horses who you pant as they gallop. فَالْمُورِيَاتِ قَدْحًا, then this happens. فَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبْحًا, and then that happens. فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَقْعًا, and then that happens. So it's like quick succession, so it is connecting it in that way. If that's what you were asking about, that's the explanation. Does that answer your question?
Follow up. So sort of like there is other verses where they use like a wow, but then it's usually several qasams in a row. I'm not sure which surah it is, but this seems like it's one qasam, and then the fa is like sort of explaining the charging steeds. Is that usually the case when the fa is like elaborating on the first qasam or something like that?
In this case, it does appear to be like that, but I'm not sure. I think you could possibly analyze it in different ways. And the reason I'm saying so is it's actually analyzed like that in Surah Shams. Okay, in Surah Shams, the scholars differ as to how many qasams are taken consecutively. Washamsi waduhaha. Is it washamsi? That's your first qasam, and then waduhaha is is waw al-atf, and then washamsi waduhaha wal-qamari idha talaha, that's your second one. وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا جَلَّاهَا وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَاهَا وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا. So wasama, that's one. وَمَا بَنَاهَا, is that a separate one or is that atf? So there's differences of opinion about that. So some end up counting, I think it's 11, and some end up counting 9. I think I've heard 7 as well. So it's not hard and fast, because in terms of analysis, whether you analyze it as an independent waw al-qasam, whether you analyze it as only harf al-atf, the functionality at the end of the day is exactly the same. It won't change the function, it won't change the meaning, it won't change anything at all whatsoever. But in the case of Surah Al-Adiyat, considering the meaning and considering the structure of it, I will have to just confirm with the text, of Arab itself. But the way I see it, it's one atf, one qasam, and thereafter it is atf. Does that answer your question? Let me show you a document here as well. While you... Okay. So let me see. I'm just going to share quickly a I'rab al-Quran thingamajig here. It's I'rab al-Quran lid-da'as. Surah Al-Adiyat. So here you can see wal-adiyati jar wa majrur متعلقان بفعل القسم محذوف ضبحا مفعول مطلق لفعل محذوف والجملة الفعلية في محل النصب حال فالموريات قدحا. So in the case of, by the way, in the case of ضبحا قدحا subahan, etc., they are, you can just analyze them as saying hal, halatul nasb, and why it's showing the condition, it's showing how, so it's showing hal, except in the case of something like subh, where it's specifically showing you time. So in that case, it's dharf zaman. So in all of the ayat, والعاديات ضبحا فالموريات قدحا فالمغيرات سبحا, the first two hal, then subhan would have been hal, but it's specifically showing time, so it runs, you analyze that as dharf zaman. Where am I? والعاديات فالمغيرات سبحا فأثرن به نقع, back to hal again. But that's not what I was looking at, right? I was looking at the qasam. So let's see. First one is qasam. فالموريات, he just says معطوف على العاديات. You see this here? معطوف على العاديات. So he doesn't analyze it as an independent qasam. And then again فالمغيرات معطوف على العاديات. And then فأثرن به معطوف على ما قبلها. معطوف ومعطوفة, connected to what came before it. And again فوسطن به معطوفة على ما قبلها. Right? I hope you're seeing this. And إن الإنسان سدي, of course that's the end of it. So that's exactly like I was saying, in that it's the same, you know. So of course it's exactly like I was saying. I do kind of know what I'm talking about, inshallah. But yeah, I think that covers the analysis of the first part. What I did today, instead of looking at it one word at a time, I looked at the entire section as a set, so that you can actually see it's the same thing repeated over and over again. So that was the first three. Let's look at the next one. فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَقَعَ. Explain this construction here. فَأَثَرْنَ. Just tell me as much about this as you possibly can. Anyone, quickly. Okay, I'm going to ask specific questions. Let's start with the very easy one, the answer of which we gave already. Explain the fa. Can you again not unmute yourselves?
I can't remember the Arabic term, but it's just joining on the previous.
Okay, so that's called harful atf. Harful atf. A letter of joining, I think. There might be a better word than joining, but that's fine for now. And the next word, the next question I have is, explain the noon at the end. Explain the noon at the end.
Is it the doer?
The noon at the end is the doer. In other words, the fa'il. So what do we call that doer? Noon what? Noon what? Noon what? What does the noon indicate? It is the doer, but who is the doer? Tell me about this doer.
It's usually three, they, I think, 3 plus females.
There we go. 3 plus females. So this is called Noonun Niswa. Noonun Niswa. The noon showing women. فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَقَعَ. It's not he did, it's not she did, it's not they did, it's they, females, 3 or more did. And who's it referring to though? Where's this noon going back to? It's showing, okay, they all females did. Where's the females in this discussion?
The horses.
Adiyat.
There we go. So والعاديات is jam mu'annath salim. The at shows jam mu'annath salim, and فأثرن به goes back to that. Now the same thing repeats itself in the next verse. فوسطن به جمعا. فوسطن, you have the fa ul atf, okay, and then you have the verb wasata, meaning to go in the middle, and then you have the nunun niswa going back to the adiyat. Okay. فأثرن به, so that's the fi'al. The na is your fa'il, and where's your maf'ul? Quickly, we don't have much time left.
نقع.
Wow, that was loud. Yes, naqa'a is your maf'ul.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. And then the next one, wasatuna bihi jam'a. Where in this construction would the maf'ul be if it's exactly the same analysis? Quickly. Jam'an, excellent. So it's pretty straightforward analyses in this surah up until this point. And I hope, inshallah, that when moments like this come up, you check your knowledge by going through each and every one and asking, do I know this? Do I know this? If you want to see if you know it, what you should actually do is after class, you sit with the surah, you sit with the ayat, and you actually analyze each and everything from the beginning till the end. And wherever you get stuck, you either contact your teacher or your fellow classmates, or you refer to a book, but you check what it is, especially when it's easier. The more difficult stuff that you're going to struggle with, like each and every word, that you maybe do collectively so that you don't get despondent. But for the easier stuff, you do by yourself and you actually try to master it at that point, inshallah. Trust me, it makes a world of difference when you can actually do this independently. You just feel more confident with the Quran, inshallah. So the next bit, and I'm going to end off on this because it's 10:45, and I think this is fine for as far as the I'll check again before next week if we require to actually do anything else specifically. But let me just go through this quickly. Innal insana. So you have inna, and then you have the ism of inna, al insana, li rabbihi jar wa majroor. And then mudaf mudafun ilay li rabbihi, and then of course lakanud is your khabar of inna. So that's a pretty straightforward sentence again. Indeed, humankind is lakanud, most ungrateful, and you've already got the analysis of the word there. And then again, this ayah and its i'rab, its construction, is repeated in the next one. Wa innahu ala dhalika la shahid, and indeed he upon that is la shahid. So you have the inna, the ism of inna, ala dhalik, that's jar wa majroor, and then you have the khabar of inna, la shahid, most definitely a witness. And the same thing again repeats itself, wa innahu li hubbil khayri la shadid, and indeed he li hubbil khayr, for the love of goodness, is la shadid, most severe. So you have again the same construction repeating itself here. So if you know the first one, you should be able to repeat it and go through to the third one, inshallah. أفلا يعلم إذا بعثر ما في القبور وحصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير. I will go through that rather next week, inshallah ta'ala. Quickly, are there any questions, anything that you'd like to share or ask or inquire about, etc.? Please, you may feel free to do so now.
Maulana, is there any way that we can get to some of the Surah came at specific times? And I know the word, but I won't say it because I'm not sure of the pronunciation. The Sabab Nuzul or something. How do we find that? Is there a source for it, please?
Okay. Yeah, shukran for the question. The nice part about tafasir like this, the Ma'arif al-Quran, is that if there is a reliable sabab al-nuzul, reason of revelation, then it will have it in there. It will list it in there. However, it's not always that you find asbabun nuzul, which is the plural of sababun nuzul, for an ayah. Not every ayah has a sababun nuzul that we know of. In this instance here, he does mention al-wahidi somewhere. Let me just check. I think I did it in here. Okay, anyway, let me not get sidetracked right now. There are works that specifically focus on asbabun nuzul, but they are reference works that I think is going to be a bit too much for the beginner. You also need to know some authentication skills. You need to know how to navigate what is authentic and what is not before you go to those reference works like Al-Wahidi, Asbabun Nuzul, and so on. So there are works specifically dedicated to that. However, a book such as this one, Ma'arif al-Quran, or another sort of comprehensive tafsir work will include the Sababun Nuzul of a surah or of an ayah, if there is one that is authentic. So that makes your life a bit easier, as opposed to having to look at a book that's specifically dedicated to that. That's a bit more advanced, and you need to be able to determine, because there's a lot of Asbabun Nuzul that have been narrated, but there's no authentic chain of narration for it. Yeah.
Shukran.
Afwan, it's a pleasure. Any other questions, comments? I actually see it's time to go now. Okay, so I have to end off this session, if I understand correctly, and you'll be joining the other class, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khairan. All the best for Ramadan. Do keep us, your classmates, your teachers, your colleagues, the ummah at large, in your du'as. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the most successful Ramadan of our lives, the blessed Ramadan, a Ramadan in which we spend time with the Quran from especially a study perspective. And may Allah ta'ala open up our hearts, minds and souls for the blessings that the Quran will give us and will offer us through Allah ta'ala's qudra in the month of Ramadan. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad, subhanallah wa bihamdik, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.